The day started like any other on my ranch. The morning air was crisp, the dew clung to the grass, and the horses grazed lazily by the fence line. Out here, away from the chaos of suburban life, I valued my peace. The land stretched for acres, rolling. Pastures, a creek running through the backfield, and a ranch house I'd restored with my own 2 hands. This place was my sanctuary, bought outright years ago, free from city politics, and more importantly, free from meddling HOAs. At least, that's what I thought. I first noticed the strange SUVs a month ago, circling the dirt road near my property like vultures. At first, I figured they were lost city folks gawking at the wide-open space. But then came the letters. Thick, envelopes with cheap official-looking HOA letterheads demanding dues, listing rules about lawn height, paint colors, and livestock restrictions. I laughed the first time I read one, crumpling it and tossing it into the fire pit. "Nice try," I muttered, shaking my head. My ranch had never been part of a development, and no HOA in the world could annex my land with a pen stroke, but the letters didn't stop. They escalated. Final warning stamped in red across the top, threatening fines of hundreds, then thousands of dollars. They even threatened foreclosure. That's when I knew this wasn't some clerical mistake. Somebody out there, probably some power-hungry Karen who had taken over the neighborhood HOA down the road, thought they could strong-arm me into submission. I ignored them, thinking it would blow over. But one Saturday morning as I was fixing the fence line, I heard the crunch of gravel and looked up to see 2 sheriff's cruisers pulling into my driveway. My stomach dropped, not from fear, but from disbelief. I wiped the sweat from my brow, leaning against the fence post as the deputies climbed out, one tall and stern, the other younger and clearly nervous. "Morning," I said, trying to keep my tone even. "What brings you boys out here?" The older deputy adjusted his hat and cleared his throat. "We got a call from the Oak Ridge HOA. Said you've been refusing to pay your dues and violating community guidelines. They filed a complaint." I barked out a laugh, almost doubling over. "Community guidelines? What community? This ranch is on private land. Been in my name since the day I signed the papers. I'm not part of any HOA." The younger deputy glanced at a clipboard in his hands, frowning. They said your property falls under their jurisdiction since they expanded last year. Said it's in their charter." That made my blood boil. Expansion? Jurisdiction? This was land my grandfather had walked on before me, and no paper pushers in a HOA meeting had the right to claim it. I crossed my arms, standing tall. "Son, their charter means nothing on my land. You tell them if they want to test me, they're welcome to try, but they won't like the outcome." The older deputy gave me a long, tired look, like he'd been dealing with these people for too long. I figured as much. "We'll write this up as a civil dispute. Just keep your cool. HOA folks can be persistent." Persistent was an understatement. That night, I caught a couple of HOA members parked at the end of my drive, taking pictures of my house like they were building a case. The next morning, I found a bright orange notice of violation stapled to my fence. They claimed my barn was unauthorized construction, my horses were livestock not permitted within HOA bounds, and even my truck, an old but reliable F-250, was an unregistered eyesore. That was the last straw. They wanted a fight, and I wasn't the type to roll over. The next few days felt like a game of cat and mouse. Every time I turned around, there was some HOA busybody creeping near the fence line, snapping photos or sticking another notice onto my gate. At first, I tore them down and burned them, but then I realized, no, I wanted a collection. I started saving them in a box on the porch, stacking them higher and higher as evidence of their harassment. By midweek, the so-called president of the HOA herself showed up, Karen. Every stereotype you can imagine: short blonde bob haircut, oversized sunglasses, lips pursed so tight they could crack a walnut. She drove a spotless white SUV and parked it dead center in my driveway like she owned the place. Without so much as a hello, she marched up to my porch, clipboard in hand. "You're in violation of at least 6 HOA bylaws," she barked, looking over her glasses at me as if I were a misbehaving child. Failure to comply will result in legal action and fines accruing daily. I sipped my coffee, leaned against the railing, and smiled. Ma'am, you must be lost. This ranch isn't under your HOA. Never has been. Never will be. Her face flushed red, but she didn't back down. Oak Ridge voted to expand last year. Your land is within our boundaries now. That means you're subject to our rules, and you owe 3 months of dues, plus penalties. I couldn't help it. I laughed. Full, deep belly laughter that echoed across the pasture. Lady, you can vote to expand all you want. Doesn't mean you can annex private property. That's not how the law works. She stiffened, her jaw twitching, and jabbed a finger toward me. We'll see what the sheriff has to say. And just like that, she stormed back to her SUV, tires kicking up gravel as she peeled out of my drive. I thought it was over for the day, but an hour later, the cruisers rolled back in, this time 3 of them. Karen followed behind in her SUV, smug as a cat that just cornered a mouse. The deputies got out, looking weary already. One of them, the same older one from before, rubbed his temple like he had a headache. Sir, we've had multiple complaints filed against you. We're going to have to investigate. Karen strutted forward, waving her clipboard like it was the Constitution. There, arrest him for trespassing. He's refusing to comply with HOA bylaws and obstructing community governance. The deputy gave her a look that could cut steel. Ma'am, this is a civil matter, not criminal. Nobody's getting arrested today. But Karen wasn't satisfied. She spun toward me, jabbing her finger again. You can either pay the dues and fix the violations, or we'll take this to court. And trust me, we win every time. I took a slow step off the porch, closing the distance between us. Not threatening, but steady, deliberate. Karen, I said, keeping my voice calm, I've lived on this ranch for years. I paid for it in full. I've got the deed, the title, the survey. All of it says plain as day this land is private, outside your subdivision. You can send cops, you can send letters, you can scream until you're blue in the face, but this land is mine. And if you or your HOA step foot past that fence again, it'll be trespassing. For a second, just a flicker, I saw doubt cross her face. But it disappeared fast, replaced by that smug little smirk. We'll see about that, she sneered, before storming back to her car. The deputies lingered, clearly tired of being dragged into her crusade. The older one gave me a nod. Just keep your paperwork handy. Something tells me she's not done. He wasn't wrong. That night, floodlights flicked on across the road where Karen lived, and I saw silhouettes moving, neighbors, gathering, whispering, plotting. The HOA had declared war, and I knew the next strike was coming soon. A couple of days passed without incident, but it was the calm before the storm. I spent the mornings tending the horses and patching fences, but I could feel eyes on me. Karen's white SUV drove past the edge of my property at least twice a day, like a predator circling prey. Each time she slowed down, staring, as if sheer willpower could bend my land into her domain. Then came the official-looking envelope, hand-delivered by some smug HOA lackey. It wasn't just another violation. Notice. No, this one was bigger, stamped with legal jargon, citing county ordinances, threatening a lien on my property. The audacity made me laugh, but deep down, I knew this was their next escalation. Karen had pulled strings to rope in county clerks, maybe even bribed someone into rubber stamping her nonsense. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with a glass of bourbon and pulled out my own arsenal. The original deed, the survey maps, and a stack of legal documents proving beyond doubt that my ranch was carved out long before Oak Ridge HOA was even a dream. The land was mine, free and clear. And if they thought they could bulldoze their way into stealing it, they were in for a fight. The next morning, it all came to a head. I was out by the barn, tossing hay, when I heard the rumble of engines. Not 1 or 2 vehicles this time. 6 SUVs rolled in, along with 2 county trucks. The whole convoy stopped at my gate like they were raiding a compound. Out stepped Karen, dressed like she was leading a revolution, clipboard tucked under her arm. Behind her were county officials in cheap suits, flanked by deputies who looked none too happy to be there. Karen's voice rang out, shrill and commanding. "You've ignored every notice, every fine, every warning. Today, this property is under HOA enforcement. You're trespassing, and we're here to remove you." I leaned on the fence, calm as ever. "Trespassing? On my own land? You've really lost it, Karen." One of the county men stepped forward, clearing his throat. "Sir, according to the filings provided by the Oak Ridge HOA, your property was incorporated into their jurisdiction last year. That means you're legally obligated to follow their bylaws and pay dues. Failure to comply could result in seizure." The deputies shifted uncomfortably, clearly unsure about this circus. I pulled the leather folder from under my arm and slowly, deliberately opened it. "You boys might want to take a good look at this before you embarrass yourselves further." I handed over the deed, the title, and the survey maps, each stamped and notarized, each proving in plain black ink that my land predated their little suburban utopia. "This ranch was established long before your subdivision existed. It's private, unincorporated, and outside your jurisdiction. You can't annex it, you can't tax it, and you sure as hell can't seize it." The older deputy glanced over the papers, then passed them to the county official. His eyebrows furrowed as he read, flipping through the documents again and again. Finally, he muttered, This shows your land is sovereign to this parcel. It's not included in Oak Ridge. They can't enforce HOA bylaws here." Karen's face went pale, then red, then pale again. She snatched the papers out of his hands and waved them in the air. "These are fake. He probably printed them off the internet." That got a chuckle from me. "Ma'am, you can call the county registrar yourself. Every stamp, every signature checks out. Unlike your little expansion. Vote." The county man stepped back, looking irritated now. "Ma'am, you wasted our time. This property isn't under your HOA. You have no legal standing here." The smug confidence drained out of Karen's face, replaced with fury. She stomped her foot like a child denied candy. "This isn't over," she screeched. "We'll find another way." The deputies exchanged glances, one of them muttering under his breath, "I sure hope not." As the convoy pulled away, Karen lingered in her SUV at the edge of my drive, glaring at me through the tinted glass. I tipped my hat with a grin. She thought she'd won the war by dragging the county out here, but all she'd done was prove how far she was willing to go. And I knew she wasn't finished. People like Karen never quit, not until they're broken completely. I knew Karen wouldn't let it go. People like her feed on control, and when they lose it, they double down. A week passed with an uneasy quiet. No SUVs, no notices, no cops. But that calm felt wrong, like the hush before a thunderstorm. Sure enough, the storm came. It was a Friday evening, and I was sitting on the porch watching the sun sink behind the hills when I heard the distant rumble of engines again. I set my glass of bourbon down and waited. Within minutes, Karen rolled up with half a dozen HOA members in tow, armed with cameras, clipboards, and that smug righteousness only bureaucrats seem to carry. This time, she didn't bring deputies. She must have realized the law wasn't on her side. Instead, she came with numbers, hoping intimidation would work where legal threats had failed. She hopped out of her SUV, megaphone in hand. "Attention! You are illegally occupying this property, which has been annexed by Oak Ridge HOA. You have 24 hours to vacate, or we will take possession." The absurdity of it almost made me laugh. Almost. But something in her eyes told me she was done playing games. She wasn't bluffing. She meant to follow through. Consequences be damned. I stood up slowly, pulled the leather folder from the porch table, and walked down the steps. "Karen," I said, my voice steady, "you've wasted the sheriff's time, you've wasted the county's time, and now you're wasting mine. You don't own this land. You never will. And if you set one foot past that fence again, you'll be trespassing. Do you understand?" She raised the megaphone again, but before she could speak, headlights appeared behind her convoy. A black pickup truck rolled in, followed by another, then another. My friends from neighboring ranches. Word had gotten around about Karen's antics, and they'd come to stand with me. Tough men and women, calloused hands and steady stares, stepping out one by one, arms crossed, boots crunching gravel. Karen froze, her megaphone trembling slightly. The sight of half a dozen ranchers wasn't what she expected. One of them, my neighbor Bill, spat into the dirt and said, "Karen, you don't speak for the valley. We've had enough of your nonsense. You harass one of us. You harass all of us." The HOA members shifted uncomfortably, their confidence draining away. They weren't used to pushback, certainly not like this. Karen tried to rally them, shouting about bylaws and votes, but her voice cracked and nobody followed. I stepped closer, holding up the deed folder. "This is the law," I said firmly, "not your fantasy. My land, my ranch, my rules. You ever try this stunt again and I'll take you to court myself. And trust me, you'll lose more than just your little title of HOA president." For the first time, I saw real fear in her eyes. She sputtered something about calling higher authorities, but nobody was listening anymore. Even her own HOA crew started backing toward their cars, muttering about not wanting to get involved. Within minutes, engines started, and the convoy peeled out, leaving Karen standing there alone, her power evaporating like smoke. Finally, she turned, climbed into her SUV, and sped away without another word. The valley was quiet again. The ranchers clapped me on the back, sharing a few laughs at Karen's expense before heading home. I stood on the porch as the stars came out, the air cool and still, my land stretching out before me just as it always had. Karen had thrown everything she had at me, letters, fines, cops, even county officials, and still failed. Because at the end of the day, paper threats and loud voices don't mean a thing against truth, law, and the kind of grit people like me were raised with. And as I sipped the last of my bourbon, I couldn't help but smile. Out here, in the wide open, you don't bow to anyone, especially not an HOA.